Good morning. This is Anna Crowe with the Get Real podcast, where CEOs, CMOs, and communications experts and leaders share their real advice. It's 5 questions in under 9 minutes because we get to it real fast. So let's get to it. I'm so excited to have our guest on today. In a few sentences, could you please tell us who you are and what you do, Julie?
Hello there, Anna. Thank you for having me today. And I'm Julie Collins, and I look after the CDC's Office of Smoking and Health Tips Campaign. And the Tips Campaign has delivered more than 1 million quits. And it's my role to help us determine how we're going to get to the next million.
Wow. Well, you do such important work. I mean, life-changing work, Julie. And I bet part of that work is creating connections with customers, partners, employees, and everybody around you. And I hear from other leaders that creating authentic connections can be challenging when it's very noisy out there. What's your take on that?
Well, Anna, you're right that creating those connections is very difficult. And then that's true in typical times. But particularly now that we find ourselves in the midst of a pandemic, that becomes even more challenging. So, what I've found is that truly connective and authentic relationships are built on transparency and trust. And that's true in a pandemic and true not in the pandemic. Damien Barr said at the beginning of the pandemic that we were all in the same storm, but we were in different boats. And understanding that sensibility in this very difficult and challenging time helps you really take a step back and meet your customer and your teammates where they are. Because everyone has experienced this particular moment in time very differently. People who have children, people who are alone, people who have partners, people who are caregivers. There's a lot going on in people's lives, even beyond their work. So, meeting them where they are and really understanding what's going on and having a lot of empathy and giving a lot of grace is making the difference and really turning that tide during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. And you're so right. I mean, trust is the foundation for everything. And how else can you build it if you don't really meet people where they are and truly understand what's going on and how you can best support them? So I love that advice. Do you have any other real advice for other leaders? Is there anything else that you think is really important?
Yes, I mean, the advice I would offer is be as strong as you can be. That so much of the time we're taking care of everyone else. We're concerned about what's going on with our team members. We're concerned about what's going on with our leadership. But taking care of yourself so that you can take care of others is very important. You know, all of us are business travelers and we've been on the plane and we've heard the advice of put the oxygen mask on yourself so that you can take care of the others next to you. Same thing goes for life, right? That Camus said that in the midst of winter, I found within me there was an invincible spring. So I would just always encourage every leader dig into yourself, find your invincible spring, and take care of yourself. Self care is not selfish.
Mhm. You're so right, and that's beautifully said. And self-care has been this trending buzzword, right? But to I think to so much so that sometimes they're like, yeah, whatever, self-care, I don't really know what it means, but really truly understanding why it's so important to take care of yourself first so you can be of service to others is so important. So I love that you touch on that point, and bring it all back to, you know, what's happening in the world today. Still very important to connect with others and listen to others, but know what you need, and make sure that that's properly serviced, for lack of a better word. Very
You have
cool.
to take care of both parts of the equation
Mhm.
in order to be effective
Yeah, absolutely.
and to be a happy person.
Yeah, yes,
That's kind of important too.
absolutely. Very cool. Well, before we get to our last question, which is more of a fun one, are there any other successful executives such as yourself that you would like to acknowledge while we have you on this podcast?
Well, thank you for that question. I am very inspired by the work of extraordinary people and particularly extraordinary women. And Dr. Deidre Kittner, who has just stepped in and is now the leader of the Office of Smoking and Health. and really doing a lot of work on health equity and bringing those issues to the forefront in her role. Bridget McGowan, who's the author of Rise and Sizzle, is one of the most dynamic leaders that I've had the pleasure of meeting and continues to inspire me every day. And Simone Morris, who's the author of The Power of Owning Your Own Career, and also one of my professors at NYU, has also given me great guidance as well as tremendous counsel and wise leadership. And Natasha Phelps, who's at the Public Health Law Center, is doing a lot of work focused on some of our most at-risk populations, particularly as they become inundated with misinformation. So those four women are just crushing it, and they make me believe again in the power of leadership and certainly in the power of intelligence.
Wow, I love that. And I look forward to learning more about these women. They sound incredible.
They are.
Well, our last question, as I mentioned, is more of a fun one. You've had this amazing career, and our listeners and viewers always want to know how our guests got started. So, can you tell us about your first job?
Well, my first job was not that glamorous. It was actually working after school and on Saturdays at the Penny Saver newspaper in my community. And I learned how to write copy and work with customers and build their advertising and talk to them about their results. And, it really set me on a course of leadership because I worked for, it was a female led business, and I worked for a female entrepreneur. And she really showed me what it was like to run a business and take on the responsibility of that business as well as other employees. So she really set me on that path of that level of interest.
That's great. Very cool job. And you're right, probably far departure from what you're doing now. However, awesome lessons learned, I assume, and sounds like a great experience.
Content creation continues to be a good skill set. It's one, and I'm very glad I learned in my teenage years.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, how can people get a hold of you, Julie, or learn more about the organization and everything you guys are up to?
That'd be great. I would give my professional email. It's julie.collins@plowsharegroup.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter at CollinsATL.
Lovely. Well, I appreciate you joining us today, and thanks everyone for tuning in. This is Anna Crowe. For more insights, visit us at crowepr.com. Thanks so much. Make it a great day.